So we are live, right? Yeah. All right, we're live here at the Attention Era Media Studios overlooking beautiful downtown Milwaukee. You're watching hour 7 of our 24 hours of live broadcast Google Hangouts for Community Manager Appreciation Day. This is year 3 we've been doing this, and the 5th year actually to celebrate Community Manager Appreciation Day. We'd love to give a shout out to our award sponsors for the Community Manager Appreciation Day Awards, and those are Be the Change Revolutions, Blockler, Higher Logic, My Community Manager, Online Community Results, socialmedia.org, and Sprout Social. So we're the gang from My Community Manager. My name is Brew, co-producer here, as well as the director of Awesome at Be the Change Revolutions. And things over to Sherry.
Hey everyone, I'm Sherry Rohde, and I lead community and user experience at Rebellion Media, in addition to producing CMGR Hanging Out with Brew.
And I am Dom. I am social media freelance Highlander. I like that one. We'll keep
Sticking
going.
with that one?
We're going that one still.
Right.
And I hang out with these two awesome kids every single Friday with my community manager.
And over on my shoulder here is the Zoom board. So if you want to get things up on the Zoom board, just tweet ahead at just take that. And we're
good.
So, with that, I'll just hand things over to Fred.
Okay, thanks, guys. So we're just going to introduce the panel, and then we're going to start chatting to everyone. So, Kat Jenkins, tell us who you are and what you do.
Hello everyone, I'm Kath. I'm a writer for Content Candy, a Johannesburg-based agency, but I reside in Durban, and I'm also a columnist. And I've been around on the internet since the days of ISDN and the days of when forums were big. So we're quite excited to chat today about social media crises. And up next, I think we'll hand over to Kirsty.
Hey everyone, I'm Kirsty. I own a digital and content marketing agency called Stir. We're based in Durban, South Africa, but we service clients nationally. And I'm looking forward to getting into the meat of how to handle the end of the world on social media. Naz?
Okay, Naz, do you want to tell us who you are, what you do?
Yes, I definitely want to tell you guys who I am. I'm Nazreen Ibrahim. I run a digital media and communications startup company in Durban called Socially Acceptable, and it's I think going somewhere. We aim to make KZN more socially acceptable, but I also do a lot of freelance work, and I host 2 radio shows in a local community radio station. So lots of things happening this way. Hey Samantha.
Hey. My name is Samantha Perry. I'm a specialist technology and telecommunications journalist and researcher, and I get to sit and laugh at all the community managers having crises on Twitter.
Okay, guys, we'll get started with the first question, and that is, if you want to go back to 2014, which brand or company had the worst social media crisis? And we'll start with Kat. Who do you think?
Sure. I'm going to be really, really, really patriotic here, and I'm not going to pick on a South African company. Purely because there is one social media crisis that sticks out for me from last year that I think was substantially upsetting for a lot of people, and all I have to say is American Airlines, and we can remember that one, all of us quite well, I'm sure. But it taught a lot of us the strength and importance of checking your things before you hit send. And in a lot of respects, I also like the way that it was turned into a bit of a joke, because I do believe that sometimes we need to laugh at the world. But yeah, Kirsty, what do you think was the biggest social media crisis of 2014?
As far as South African brands, though, I can't, and tell me if I'm wrong, I can't recall that bad a crisis in terms of SA-based brands. But there have been a number internationally, and I think one, that maybe goes back a little bit further, was definitely the Tesco horse meat scandal that completely exploded online. And I think they're a very good testament to handling it very well. because as much as a drama as it was, they apologized to everybody, and just ensure that it wouldn't happen again. So I think that's a very, very good way, a good example of how crisis can be handled very well online.
Okay, Nath, what do you think?
So I think I'd like to talk about two of them that caught my eye. The one was the Robin Thicke planned Q&A on Twitter, where he just got flooded with questions about misogyny, and especially with his songs Blurred Lines. And I don't have, obviously, the response tweets in front of me, and I wish I did, because let me just double check if I do, because I collected some of them. But some of the tweets were like, is the creepy stalking thing a sick publicity stunt at your expense, or just a thoughtless grab for attention and relevance? And people started tweeting with the hashtag #AskThick. It was like, and another one said, have you any familiarity with emotional manipulation as a tool of intimate partner violence? How bad could this get for the guy? So it's just an example, like one of the US rappers who had to he actually deleted his Instagram account because he went from like 1 million some odd followers down to 100,000 after they cleaned out all the fake accounts. So these are just some of the examples you have of brands or artists having such fails. Sammy, what do you think?
Sammy is trying to unmute her microphone and her mouse is fighting back. Whenever I think of social media crises from 2014, and my sense of time, bearing in mind I'm a journalist, can be dodgy. So if any of them are 2013, feel free to yell. But for last year, the Justine Sacco incident of I'm going to Africa, let's hope I don't get HIV, and then the RB Jacobs, Steve is in Afghanistan lighting a bomb into somebody's wheelchair. Those two stick out for me because there are crises which blew up to mammoth proportion very rapidly, and they were very, very good examples of how what is meant humorously can be taken completely the wrong way and become a global communications crisis in the case of Justine Sacco, and perhaps more local for poor old RB Jacobs, whichever one of the RBs it was. And I think serves as a there's about 6 or 7 of them, if I'm not mistaken. It serves as a reminder that when you are communicating with people, what you intend is not necessarily what they hear. And for people on social media, you need to constantly be aware that people are listening in different contexts to the one that you're speaking in.
Yep.
I have to just chime in there quickly. A lot of what happens with social media crises is that tone is misinterpreted, and I agree with you entirely there, Sam, in that what you could say as a joke becomes offensive to someone else. And it brings me back to that American Airlines tweet, because for me, I found it really funny, but that tweet wasn't directed at me. I thought it was hilarious to read. But to the person it was directed at, it was most definitely insulting. So I agree with you. Tone is important, and tone is something that needs to be watched out for at all times. Fred?
Yep.
Okay, Kath, so while we have you, what steps should you take when you get a social media crisis? What do you think? What should you do?
Okay, I'm going to hand you over to Kirsty straight after I give you my 1 point in handling a crisis, whether it is personal or professional or anything. My mom and my dad always taught me, be honest. If you've made a mistake, face up to it, because I can promise you lying about it or trying to cover it up is only going to dig a hole more deeper for you. And it happens. I mean, we've seen where brands or companies or users have tried to delete tweets or realize that they've made a mistake or there's been some kind of a crisis point, and they've tried to remove evidence of it. And to do that, you're actually just breaking trust in your brand and company. So rather, don't try and undo the mistake immediately. Deal with the mistake, fess up, say, look guys, sorry, this happened, we're human. Always, always be honest. Kirsty? What do you think, Kirst?
All right. Well, first, I think the important thing is to realize what a crisis actually is in social media. A customer complaining about your service is not a crisis. A crisis is something that goes against the norm, and it's something that comes from your consumer and doesn't come internally. And also realize that, you know, if someone's moaning about the signal to a service provider, that's not a crisis. It's something a lot bigger than that. I think the important thing when a crisis happens is to first acknowledge it. Don't just sit there and pretend like it's not happening. Ignoring it's not going to make it go away. So firstly, acknowledge it. If it's relevant, always apologize. You know, if you are in the wrong, always apologize to your community and mean it. Don't just say sorry for the sake of PR. Actually mean it when you say sorry and when you apologize. Assure that it doesn't happen again, and then ensure that it doesn't happen again. Actually go inside your business, inside your brand, and see, okay, what went wrong? How can we make sure it doesn't happen again? Naz?
I know I'm listening to you, ladies, and you all make the most relevant, valuable points. We're already providing the action steps required to address the social media crisis. And while we talk about that, I'd like to bring to a personal example that I have. I used to be a freelance opinion writer, have a monthly column in an independent group newspaper, which is called The Post. And I had written a column about Diane Kohler-Barnett, I think she's still the Shadow Minister of Police. I cited a comment from her Facebook page, and it went a bit, awry, because the Wednesday the column was published, the Friday I get a call from her. I was like, Diane even reads the Post newspaper. It's mostly an Indian community newspaper, like in South Africa. And she wanted to know from me, she says the ANC had put out a press release against her saying that she had leaked information from the then Communications Minister, Dina Pulle's hearings in the Parliament. And so they want to take her to task, and this was against her. I was like, wow, this is unbelievable. And we were almost, I say almost, called up to the Ethics Committee at the Parliament for a hearing to prove that what was quoted in the newspaper was what was online. And when I went back, I was really stupid not to have taken a screenshot of that particular comment, because in my writing and the things that I do day to day. So that's obviously a lesson, you know. It's like you got to have proof of what he said. People are saying things, the context in which they're saying. Kathy, you talked about tone, how incredibly important that is when speaking to a customer, whoever it may be, quoting someone out of context. And I went back and I looked for that quote, and it wasn't there. It wasn't there. So my editor, thankfully, had a great editor. He backed me up. And she was cleared anyway of any kind of charge of having leaked any evidence. But that's just an example of the kind of messiness or how awry things can go if you're not going to manage, you know, taking from the online to the offline space. It's incredibly important to be able to navigate that well. And with a brand, it's about taking that complaint or that negativity offline as quickly as possible. But if it's spreading online, and how to manage that in the time is very important. Sam, what do you think?
I think we need to perhaps go back to a bit of a PR 101 here. When it comes to crisis communications, you need to, as a sort of default part of your communications setup, you need to have a crisis communication process and procedures document in place. And social media is just another channel with which companies are using to speak to customers and to speak to suppliers, to speak to the media, whether they're intending to or not. And you need to have a proper crisis document that goes, if the shit hits the fan, who is able to speak to the media, who is able to make statements on Twitter, who is able to go back into the business and link those processes up with what's being said on social media. Because it's all fine and dandy going, I'm terribly sorry, Mrs. Hughes, you found horse meat in your hamburger, and we will make sure it never happens again, when the guys who are organizing meat from the suppliers have got nothing to do with us and they're just carrying on as normal. Those processes need to link up with each other. And as much as how you handle it on the day, and it's exactly what you guys have been saying, be honest, apologize where necessary, ensure it won't happen again, but that needs to tie into the back end of your business. And if your front and back ends aren't integrated, you're going to end up having another crisis.
You know, there, I think it's something you've touched on, something really, really important there, Sam, is that so often we come across, I see it all the time, people will say, oh, I see it from companies and what have you. Oh, we our social media. This is our social media team, and this is our marketing team, and they don't work together. And then the business process team or the operations team have no idea what the social media team is doing. And I use it like this because to me, when it is exactly what you're saying. It's another channel of marketing or interacting with your clients. It's not something that should be dealt with separately. It should be an integrated part of your business function. So when the left hand doesn't know what the right hand's doing, your community manager or your social media team could promise a customer the world, but when the back end of the business isn't able to back that up, it becomes an incredibly frustrating experience, not only for the clients, but for within your business too. There are a number of companies that I think do that quite well in South Africa, and I think there are a number of companies that aren't doing that so well yet. I like to believe that people have room for improvement, so they'll get there eventually. What do you think, Kirsty?
I 100% agree with what everyone said here. Social media doesn't sit on its own. It's not. We don't sit in our little community manager bubble, and that's all that we know. It has to be integrated, and that's what a lot of social media companies and agencies need to do right at the beginning with clients, to say, cool, I'll take on your stuff. I'll make your brand super pretty online. And that's where agencies and clients need to work very, very closely together. And if it's in-house, again, like Sam said, and Kat said, your front and back end need to work very closely together. Social media is an integrated part of an entire business. It doesn't sit on its own. So the messages you put out online have to match the messages that the produced.
Okay, Naz, do you want to pick up on, so we looked at the worst, which rental companies do you think did the best job in handling social media crises?
Yeah. So Fred, are you asking me this question? Because I had a bit of a break there, so I just want to hear what you're asking me again, because I know we've been talking...
Okay, so we're looking at which brand or company do you think handled the social media crisis the best last year?
The best, I think it was right towards the end of the year, and someone that really impressed me was the Air Asia CEO, Tony Fernandez. He took to Twitter to resolve the crisis around the second plane that went missing. Forgive me, I don't remember the actual name of the plane or the number that's usually given to an airplane. The second one that went down. And he was adamant in speaking with a human voice. If you look at his tweets, it was like he was on the ground. He was tweeting at every point, saying that I think there was one of their support staff, or an air hostess that had passed away in the accident, in the crash, and he tweeted that he was going to help bring her body back home for burial because she was from Indonesia. And just to see him tweeting, to see him showing support for the team, to thank them for all their hard work, to tell people, give them an update that he was looking for, he was going to make sure the entire investigation was conducted around this particular crash. We know that the plane was later found not to have taken off and that they didn't have authorization to fly. And he made sure that he stepped in at that point. And what's this showing us? That's showing us that timing is everything. So he was just one of the best that I stood. Well, ladies, what do you think?
That's actually the exact example I was going to use, Naz. It was handled very, very well, and I think it's a very good lesson for brands to always just be human. We all make mistakes, we all stuff up. Just act like a human, be compassionate, and show genuine concern for those who are disgruntled with you. But yeah, that's actually the exact example I was going to give.
No, you're absolutely right. That authenticity and humanity is vital. So there were two golden words you said there. Humanity is important. Kat?
Those are my two favorite words. I love the word humanity and authenticity.
Yep.
I'm not going to name examples, purely because I've had some personal experiences with brands in the last year where they have jumped to resolve an issue, or where they have completely failed. And I could reflect on those, but I don't think it would be fair, because I often think that personal experiences are not as objective as they could have been. as much as they could be. I completely agree with you about the AirAsia CEO. He is amazing. He really, I followed his tweets quite emotionally, I'll say, and he was not afraid to tweet how he was feeling as well. And in that respect, he did bring his humanity to it. And when you do see companies doing that, where someone has they show either empathy or they express their own emotions, even though they're a company and they're in their company silo, that is far more engaging than sending out a press statement and saying, "This is what we have to say." Do you know what I mean? Sam?
Yeah, I guess we've had some. Michael Jordan, the ex-CEO of F&B, was fantastic at bringing that personal face to a ginormous financial services monolith with 1 million people in it. It's also an example, quite frequently, as many of us discover, of where the back end and the front end don't talk, because you get amazing service on Twitter, and then trying to get the back end processes to do anything about it is a slightly more complicated problem. But again, that I guess speaks to the complexity of doing digital business in this era, when you're learning or living with companies that were founded in the gold dust era, like F&B was originally, and getting everybody up to date and up to speed and into the 21st century is apparently taking a bit of time. But it has certainly been interesting to see how some companies have completely risen to the challenge on Twitter, and how others just seem to see it as an extension of their old school call center. So you get, with some of the organizations on Twitter in South Africa, you get the same impersonal response as you would on you are number 3,742,021 in the queue. Please do not die before we get you. Which I think is a bit frustrating, because companies have an opportunity to engage one-on-one with customers here that they don't have in any other channels. And I think the ones that are not necessarily doing that personal job of it should perhaps be looking at making it a more of a one-on-one engagement than we are your impersonal service agent, we will email you later approach, which a lot of them seem to still be taking.
Bless you, Kat. Whoever that is.
Okay, Kat, we've heard this term before, a couple of minutes or so before, crisis communication. Why don't you tell us what exactly is crisis communication, and how does that apply to a social media crisis?
Okay, well, as Sam has beautifully outlined earlier, crisis communication centers obviously around a crisis, and the only way that you're ever going to be able to handle a crisis and handle a communication in crisis is if you make the plan before the crisis hits. This is the most important part of crisis communication, that it should be within just about your business plan level of when you start saying, I want to market my business X. You should say, what happens internally if a crisis hits my business? What happens if I'm looking at my front gate right now, which is not behaving so well, and the gate manufacturer, were I to tweet him right now because the gate had crashed onto a car that was coming through the driveway, what is the internal response that company will have? What is the response time that they should be aiming for? Who is responsible for when a crisis hits, and how do you communicate with a client when, the core client when there is an issue? Now, that's a very silly example of a crisis, a gate, but I'm saying that the plan has to exist long before the crisis hits. Kirsty?
Yeah, asking that question, what if, is so important. And it could come from anywhere. If you are a shoe brand, what if someone breaks their leg wearing one of your heels? If you are a sweet brand, what if someone gets an allergy because peanuts somehow snuck into your sweets? Anything can happen. And people are very vocal, so you need to know how to deal with it. Yeah, my best advice would be, like Kat said, just prepare for the absolute worst, no matter what you think that is and how you're going to deal with it. And then also be sure to put some kind of listening plan in place with your social media strategy, because bear in mind that people might not immediately at you or tag you on Facebook. So what are you listening out for? You know, what keywords, what ugly words are people changing your brand name to? You have to bear in mind to keep those words protocol as well. But yeah, just prepare for the worst, because you are in the most public space in the world, and you need to prepare for anything. Naz?
I would think that I'd like to combine what you and Kat said, Kirst, because you're both speaking about crisis communications and then the response to that. So obviously it's the planning is highly important, how to mitigate whatever risk, you identify the risks beforehand and the mitigation of those. And obviously to identify the people who would present those risks the most. So it would be the customers, the consumers, the people who are advocates of your brand, haters of the brand, brand competitors, and obviously internal. And that's why you have social media policies, right? They help to, in a way, a portion of that or some kind of policy you have regarding social media in the organization and with the brand will help dictate that. And I think also what appeals to me is to see how social media policies or crisis communication is managed when it comes from the people who are supposed to represent the brand, and those are the workers or the employees. That really interests me. It's more interesting than having consumers complain, because consumers are advocates of the brand. They have every right to say something about your brand, but then it's obviously how you're responding to that. But also when I think an employee is representing the brand online, whether they are mandated to do so or not, and that's particularly important. So I would say in crafting the crisis communications response, it should be I think a consolidated conversation among every portion of the business, and not just executive management or people who think that they're mandated to do that certain thing or to come up with a digital strategy. And I think that's the most interesting thing for me. Sam, what would you say?
I would say that it's all about relationships. For me, I train executives to deal with the media, and one of the things I tell them is that it's critically important for you to develop good relationships with the media that are influential in your sector, because when a crisis hits, you're going to need those good relationships. You're going to need people, and in the social media sphere, it would be media as well as influencers. You will need friends. You're going to need people who trust you. You need people who understand that you are an organization that operates with integrity, because those people, when the crisis hits, will be your advocates. I saw on Twitter, again, the F&B crisis with RB Jacobs. A couple of us were going, hang on a second here, yes, he, she, or it did the wrong thing, but he, she, it has apologized about 3,000 times in the last hour, so maybe we should all just calm down a bit, take a step back and go, deep breath, people, the world has not ended. And that really, when your detractors perhaps start advocating for you when a crisis hits, that's when you know you're succeeding into your communication strategy. And it needs to be planned and put in place very carefully, and often years before that crisis actually hits. You need to work out who your influencers are, who your media is, who are your target markets, who is the worst case that could be a target market. And develop those relationships well in advance. Make sure that they're honest relationships and that you're operating with integrity in those relationships. You're not just building them for the sake of abusing them when the shit hits the fan. And make sure that that's an ongoing part of your social media activity is relationship building and relationship management. Over to Fred or Kath. I'm not sure who's next.
Okay, so I'll ask Kath next. So say somebody hits you up in a social media crisis, or Kat Jenkins, media specialist. What are you going to do?
Well, have they made their crisis plan? Do they have a crisis plan? Because if they don't have a crisis plan, I can't help them. No, I'm joking. I can. We could probably help them. But the truth is like I say, if you are active in social media, on social media platforms, and you are committed to being there for your clients in that way and what have you, you have a strategy. And if you don't have a strategy, stop, go back and make one. And if you don't know how to make one, get in touch with an agency who can. That's why people like Kirsty and Naz exist. They are the specialist wonder people at this. So employ people who know how to handle them and who know how to create good content and wonderful engagement for you. And if you don't know and you don't want to employ someone, learn and be willing to learn. And I think that the first piece of advice I would give to someone if they were facing some kind of a social media crisis is to listen to what their customers are saying to them rather than try to defend themselves immediately. I think if you have stuffed up, apologize, and then listen to what is being said to you, because your learning lies in those responses. Kirsty?
Yeah, we're still in a relatively new industry, this whole online thing. It's actually not, it hasn't been around that long. So yeah, we are constantly learning. And I always say, you know, the negative responses can be turned into a positive. You know, we look at these negative responses and learn from them. Okay, why are people hating on my brand? Why don't they like me? All right, that's why. I'm going to do something about it. And again, that comes back to integrating your social media strategy into every aspect of your company. So yeah, we're all still learning. It's all still new, and also realize you can never please everybody. You can't. Not everyone's going to be happy. Someone's always going to have something to say, no matter how much you apologize, no matter how much you defend your brand or your company. So always bear that in mind as well. Yes.
What you two ladies talked about with, I think, coming up with, a company comes to you and says, well, or if for my own company, I need a social media crisis plan. But the thing also is to understand, there's a lot of education that needs to happen around this, because big brands are doing it, yes. They understand the value of having plans in place and responding timelessly to queries, complaints, or very negative sentiments online. But also, I think it's that education point needs to be driven home more. And I know here in Durban we're currently pushing the idea of a new organization called IDEA, which is the Independent Digital Excellence Association. And our whole mandate is education with clients or the general public. And the thing there is that I have had many people ask me, and some people who own big business ask me, well, why should I even bother responding to people online? I'm just going to delete their Facebook message, their Facebook comment rather, or delete a tweet. Or you can't delete their tweet, obviously, but just bury your head in the sand and not focus on that. And there, again, it's education, education, education. So you're planning, you're educating yourself, you're trying to tell the client, you sell them the idea that they're only hurting their brand by not educating themselves and not responding to people. And that in itself is like a death knell, you know? They might as well take a sword and stick it in themselves because they've already just done it if they're not going to respond. I think, Sam, you're going to agree with me on that one.
Completely. It's often interesting having conversations with some of the older school executives that I deal with who consider Twitter to be something that their children play on and spend way too much time interacting with. And they sit there going, but I'm a manufacturer of ball bearings, for example. Why do I need to be on social media? But the thing is, if your ball bearings malfunction and cause a crisis at somebody's factory, and that's all over social media, you need to be there to defend yourselves. You need to be there to be listening to what people are saying about you. And you need to be there to respond. You need to, a lot of executives, I think, especially as, again, some of the older generations don't necessarily take social media seriously. In the same way that a lot of them consider marketing to be poppies running around in high heels and, you know, organizing cocktails. Which is, you know, again, one of those old-fashioned perceptions that persists. People need to take their communications and their relationships with their publics seriously, and that includes social media. It includes marketing, it includes digital, it includes that newfangled stuff your kids are doing that you don't understand and really think is boring. But you need to do it. You need to be there. Otherwise, this conversation is going to go on without you and your company ends up looking bad.
Kat, so put your thinking cap on and you're going far into the future, 2015 and beyond. You've got all these new technologies now, like wearables, goodness knows what else. Where do you think brands are starting to move with companies with the social media crisis in the future? What do you think they're going to start doing?
I think that the focus for 2015 when it comes to a social media crisis is moving away from those standard generic responses that we've become used to. It's always disappointing, as Sam mentioned. It's always disappointing when a company does the whole, your call is important to us. Thanks for your tweet. We'll look into this. I think there needs to be let's not be lazy. Let's look at responding personally. Let's look at companies actually taking an interest in what someone has to say. There's that whole thing of, oh, you buy a bag of apples and then you take it home and then it's, you find 3 worms in it, or 3.5 worms. It's actually even worse while you're eating an apple. And then the standard retailer response is, please take it back to your nearest store and we'll give you a refund. I understand that that's business process, but at the same time, there's no reason why the person who deals with that tweet or what have you could not personalize their response and personalize that response in some way, or make some sort of additional efforts. It's not that difficult to do if you really think about it on a case-by-case basis. I don't believe it's difficult. Kirsty, what do you think?
Yeah, I think consumers are far more informed these days as well, so they know if they're being bullshitted with some generic response, oh yeah, we're kind of just doing this because we have to, and we actually don't care, but here's our tweet to kind of say we do. So brands need to learn, and it also just depends on the brand. I mean, if you're a massive kind of cellular service provider, no, it's not possible to go above and beyond for every single consumer, but it is possible to rectify things in some way and kind of just calm the storm. But if you are a slightly smaller brand and you can go above and beyond for a legitimate complaint or crisis, then do so. Then the odds will always be in your favor. And like Sam said, like with what FNB has done, they've actually created brand advocates. Not just people who use FNB, but actually advocate it in times of crisis. Love in times of social media. So yeah, you do need that personal touch. You do need to go above and beyond for your consumers now, because they're not stupid. So don't try and patronize them and think that they are. Naz?
I love what the two of you said. Of course, we're hoping that in the future it will become always on response kind of mechanism, where we hope, you go into the future, we're already, as they say, the CES, I think it was Consumer and Electronics Show this year, yet again deemed 2015 the Internet of Things, which has been like the Internet of Things for a couple of years now. But as we move forward, and Fred, you asked us to put our thinking caps on, and I'm going to be quite crazy at this point and say, if I imagine the ability for us to manage social media crises going into the future, it will be with the ability to log on and talk to someone wherever you are, in the store, out of the store, on the street, looking in the air, wherever it may be. I'm imagining this futuristic kind of setup or mechanism, and probably this is because I watch too many movies, but you could scan or swipe your arm or head in absolute frustration at the brand that's not servicing your need at that point. So it would be things where it would become so integrated that you're able to log a complaint via your freezer about the Clover milk you just bought, something like that. But the way I see brands going, they're number one, in the next few years, going to have to fully accept that digital is a significant part of their brand life, so they're going to have to integrate. The second thing is that once they've got that in place, it's then about getting the necessary infrastructure, which they need to. And we know that we live in South Africa, part of Africa, which is growing steadily out of control. We'll get the connectivity issue right. We will get brand customer service right at the same time, because that in the offline world is also lacking. We as South Africans seem to take bad customer service sometimes as a given. So when people go and complain online, now it's just an extension of another extreme that's not happening offline. So when you merge those two, you have to start thinking about that. But I just think, and not to take away time from you, Sammy, is that it's just going to get very futuristic. We're going to scan our arms everywhere, waving in retaliation.
Yeah.
What do you think, Sammy?
I'm not sure what I think, actually. From a technology point of view, I mean, there will always be another tool, and there will always, as we get more improved connectivity options in South Africa and more viable connectivity options in South Africa and the rest of Africa, this internet thing is going to spread, and the million ways your customers can bitch about you is going to spread. And I think to whatever degree, a lot of companies still haven't gotten their heads around the idea of their customers as an individual. I think the patriarchal, I am the organization and I know what's best for you attitude that certainly as South Africans we're familiar with still predominates. And the concept of my customer is an individual with a voice and with power who can go and move to my competitor at the drop of a hat because they can do that research online. They can check from their friends what a company's service is like because they don't believe you're advertising. They believe what their friends tell them because they'd rather have the first person recommendation than take an ad from a company which by and large advertising has not been proven to be the most, how should I put this, honest communications tool in the history of ever. So you're now dealing with an entire generation of consumers who are better informed, better connected, and able to switch companies faster than you can realize you're about to lose a whole chunk of your business to your competition. So until companies change their attitudes to digital and the entire digital universe that certainly we all occupy, then we're going to carry on seeing crises and we're going to carry on seeing issues and we're going to carry on getting the equivalent of your number 3,227 billion in the queue. And yeah, I'm hoping 2015 is the year that we see those attitudes start to change on a broader level. There are certainly some forerunners. A lot of companies have definitely hopped on the bandwagon and they're moving ahead quickly, but it needs to spread. It needs to become mainstream.
Okay, so finishing up now, last question. Okay, so I'm a big company and I'm getting all these tweets at me that they don't like my service. Why should I care about tweets? Why should I care that people are tweeting me if I'm making so much money?
Because if you enjoy making so much money and wish to continue doing so, you'll respond to your customers. It's this, to me, it's the equivalent of having people walk into a shop and then you have wonderful dresses, just as an example, on the shelves, on the racks, and your customers walk in and they're very excited and they try them on, and the most beautiful dresses they've ever looked at, and they're so excited to buy them, and then you, behind the counter, turn around and go, oh no, I don't really like your face. I think maybe I don't want to sell it to you. And like yeah, no, that one makes you look fat. No one's going to buy from you if you're not going to be nice to them and you're not going to communicate with them. So if that big businessman who thinks that reading tweets isn't important wishes to continue making the kind of money he is, then perhaps he shouldn't call people fat by not responding. Kirsty?
Yeah, this might come as a surprise to you, but your consumers are your business. So why would you treat them like crap? The same thing. You're building relationships online. Just because someone is a little, profile photo with an @ handle doesn't mean they're not a person. And that's why I'll always come back to acting like a human being, because you are. You are talking to people in the most personal space possible. And you can't just sit on your soapbox and say, "Oh, I'm the best brand ever. Look at me. Look at my products. I rock." And then people come up to you and try and have a conversation. You're just like, what? It doesn't work. You can't ignore people. So yeah, if you think that, if you're arrogant enough to think that you can't listen to what people are saying online, pretty screwed, my friend. Naz?
Sorry, you couldn't hear me there. I'm busy talking, but forgot to unmute myself. See, this is crisis communication. Let me quickly talk now. But listening to very beautiful ladies talk about this, and the beautiful ladies also going to tell us about it. But tweeting is. I speak with many people about the concept of tweeting and what that platform means for a lot of people. And we often liken it to a kind of university type of platform where there's intellectual, quick talk going on, very snappy thoughts, and also a lot of crap going on there. But the idea of the platform is for you to get your point across as quickly as possible, which means people can complain about you as quickly as possible. Yes, you can do that across all social media platforms, but you should care about your brand being tweeted about, because the amount of time it gets for your brand to take on, to be made or broken, there is literally before you could even blink. You've said this, you will say it, we will all know this for time going beyond, because that's what social media does. Power to the people. And it literally does give them power to people. Now, if you bury your head in the sand about tweeting, then I'm sorry, if you don't tweet, that's your problem on a personal level. But if your brand is being tweeted about and you're not listening to this, you're not listening about competitor brands, how would you ever expect to save the brand when something's going on? The building is burning. You either get somebody in there to put the fire out and save people, or you let everything go to ground. And the other thing is, if people are speaking about you, you can be nice, you can tell them off very nicely, diplomatically, and gain respect for yourself, or you can ignore it and get walked all over. I think that's just a simple analogy to understand why you should care about your brand, and that's a good way for crisis communication. Sam?
Yes, I suppose it goes back to what I was saying in response to the last question. You know, your customers are online in real time checking out your competitors. Are you chasing them away, or are you welcoming no more water for me? Are you welcoming them in with open arms and going, hey, nice to see you, how can we help you today? And by the way, you know, we saw you were interested in this because you let us know that, and you know, we can get you this, this, and that at the same time. There's an enormous potential for value add in the social media space, because it is the only channel that companies have where they can have a one-on-one conversation with their customers. It's the only one. Advertising, broadcasting, print, even email, and all those other wonderful things like the telephone are very much mass media. They're not one-on-one engagements, and with the channels like social media networks that give you an opportunity for those one-on-one engagements are incredibly powerful. And your customers are literally telling you on a daily basis what they want. They're literally telling you on a daily basis where you need to be changing your product lines. They are literally telling you with every single communication what they want to buy from you next. And if you're not listening, you're going out of business. Sorry, that's all I have for today.
Thanks so much, guys. We're running out of time, so I'm going to hand it back to Sherry and gang. Thank you so much to Kat Jenkins, Kirsty Bissett, Naz Ibrahim, and Samantha Perry, the South African team. Thanks so much, guys.
Woohoo!
Thanks
Thank
for
you,
having
Fred.
us.
Thanks,
Yeah.
guys.
Thank
you.
Thank you so much. The fun thing, you guys, and we were sort of talking in the chat with you, you know, you guys peaked out at the most live viewers that we have had on a panel so far today. So really excited. There's obviously a lot of people that, you know, this crisis management stuff is really important. So, and you guys have, Twitter was really, really buzzing, and, you know, here over in the States, there's some places where it's still like 5 a.m. right now, or 4 a.m. So it's really, really awesome. So thanks a lot, guys.
Cool. So coming up next is accessibility communities. So again, you can tune in by going to cmad.co, click on the broadcast schedule. You can watch past shows as well as the one that's coming up. So we'll see you guys in a couple minutes.
Yeah, and don't forget to take those hashtag CMAD selfies too.
Bye.